Hare Krishna, Haribol, Haribol, dear devotees. So this verse is actually, I was thinking that this verse was probably picked out for me by His Holiness Jayadvaita Maharaj, because this is a verse that I think if Jayadvaita Maharaj is, this is his expertise, speaking on this topic of renunciation. One of the points that I thought was really interesting in this verse is how Kardama Muni in the first part, in text 10, in text 10, how he said he immediately knew his wife, and he could tell by her face. He said, seeing your face withered, I perceive that your mind is not tranquil. Your mind is not tranquil. So this is a husband and wife that were very connected with each other, because he'd been in the forest. And so he'd been meditating. And when he come back to his home, to the ashram, he sees his wife, and he could tell, we say that the face is the index of the mind. And in ancient times, people could actually read the face. And even now, the devotees, if we're attentive to subtleties of people, we really can look at the people's faces and see what's happening with them. And so Kardama Muni and his wife, they had this very connected spiritual relationship, husband and wife, and he saw that something was happening with her. And in previous verses, he had asked her many, many questions about what could possibly be wrong, given that there are specific duties for householders. And so the fact that he and his wife were following proper Dharma, proper duties, it was natural for him to ask some questions about what could possibly have gone wrong in this situation where her face is looking so withered, her face is looking sad. And so he's like doing his duty as a husband. According to Grihastha Dharma, there are duties for the Grihasthas. And so for Kashyapa Muni, Pati Dharma, duties of married men, is to protect the wife. And there are other duties of a Grihastha, which is to be faithful to the wife, to be a servant of God, to maintain the wife and children, to deliver dependence from material existence. And so Kashyapa Muni, when he came and he saw her face like that, then naturally he wanted to protect her. He wanted to know, is something wrong? Is something happening that, I am not aware of? Has something disturbed you? Or is something going wrong in the kingdom? Is something going wrong somewhere? Are you not doing your duties as far as Grihastha Dharma? So he was inquiring in this way, and Aditi, being a dutiful wife, and let's again share what the duties of a wife is. So the wife's duty is chastity, to follow the vows of the husband, to favor the husband, to favor the husband's relatives and friends, and to follow the vows of the husband. So we said that, to follow the vows of the husband. And so Kashyapa Muni, he's a Brahmana. And as a Brahmana, we know that definitely there's certain vows that he's following, and his wife and him, they both are very connected with following those vows. And so therefore, when Kashyapa Muni came and saw her looking like that, then he wondered, are we properly following our vows of Grihastha Dharma? And so this is where Devahuti is answering the question to him. And in this, in her answering him, she says, no, everything is fine. She something to note in this translation of Srila Prabhupada is the respect that's in terms of the language that's spoken between husband and wife. So when a husband and wife are properly following their Grihastha Dharma, there is a way that they speak to each other. And so she says, no, respect. She calls him, oh, respected Brahmana. You know, this is, I guess in today's age, today's times, we may say, oh, my dear husband, or, oh, you know, something very endearing to our husbands. So this is how Aditi shows us by this example. And she says, oh, my respected husband. And so by this type of giving this kind of respect, we're acknowledging that this person has a very important role in our lives and also in the lives of everyone. And so she says to him, all is well. And then she goes on to speak about the brahmanas and the cows and religion and welfare of others and how, yes, everything is being taken care of. And so we know that Krishna says, he explains it's explained in the Vishnu Purana that, also I believe it's in the Bhagavad Gita, in the 14th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, the 16th verse of Bhagavad Gita says, Namo Brahmanya Devaya Go Brahmanahitaya Cha. I think we all know that verse. And this verse says, my Lord, you are the well-wisher of the cows and the brahmanas, and you are the well-wisher of the entire human society and the world. So now, Aditi and Kashyapa Muni, because they are practicing proper Grihastha Dharma, they understand this, they know this, and so therefore they are themselves exemplifying what has been said about the Lord, that the Lord, Krishna takes many different incarnations just in order to take care of the cows and the brahmanas. And so they're very aware. They're very aware philosophically, and they're very aware in terms of culturally. They're very aware socially of how to behave as grihasthas, how to act as grihasthas. And so she explains to him, she says, no, they everything is, as far as the brahmanas, they're being taken care of. And as far as the cows, they're being taken care of. And we see today that the brahmanas, in Kali Yuga, Prabhupada says that there are not so many, there's not brahmanas, actually everybody's a Sudra. So people don't behave in the same way as we could, we can hear when we hear about these type of grihasthas from the Sastra. We may not have so many examples in terms of Kali Yuga. However, we do have examples in terms of Sanatan Dharma and in terms of what Srila Prabhupada has given to us. We have many, many, many examples. And so she also goes on to explain that the three principles of Dharma, Artha, and Karma flourish in household life, which is consequently full of good fortune. So I thought we would look at that for a few minutes. So Dharma means religious principles, right? That's Dharma. And when for the grihasthas or the householders, it's recommended according to Grihastha Dharma that they offer sacrifices, that they distribute in charity, and they act according to prescribed duties, especially in terms of what's recommended in the Sastras. This is in terms of the grihasthas. And so so here's Aditi, she's explaining to him, yes, this everything, as far as religious principles, as far as religious Dharma, everything is being taken care of. Everyone is happy, the brahmanas are happy, the cows are happy. We see today that, that the cows, in Kali Yuga, there's no respect for the cows. We're very fortunate to live at Gitanagri, where here on the farm, the devotees are very dedicated to protecting the cows, taking care of the cows, very exemplary in how they take care of the cows, and also exemplary in showing others, how to utilize what Mother Cow offers. And so they, here in Gitanagari, the devotees, they distribute milk, and they distribute cheese, and they distribute it, in terms of hundreds of miles away from here. And so this is an example of how in that time cows were taken care of. And so here in Gitanagari, this is something that's being practiced in order to try to show that example of cow protection. And this was specifically necessary for the Grihasthas, specifically. I remember having lived in India for many years and traveling in India and going to villages, and almost every family in the village would have at least one cow, sometimes two, and and you can go at any time in the mornings and get milk from the cow, because this was just a practice of the Grihasthas. And so this is even happening today, that you can go to a village and find people that, are taking care of the cow, very much protecting the cow, families. So she says, everything is, that's all taken care of. However, these Dharma is being protected. Dharma is being taken care of. Religious principles are being taken care of. And Artha, economic development. So when you have cows, then there's economic development. That's a part of it. The cows, they do the cows take care actually of everything for a human being, everything. And so Artha means to be like, to have financial facilities. And so, in this verse, all the financial things were cared for. There was no problem. They had no poverty in that particular ashram, or in that particular community that Kashyapa and Aditi were living. And then she says that and also karma, sense gratification. So sense gratification, karma, we know means, basically that word means lust. So eating, sleeping, mating, defending. And she says that all that is taken care of. And so Prabhupada says in a lecture in Detroit, he explains, he says, to eat, to make arrangements for eating, to make arrangements for sleeping, to make arrangements for sense gratification, and to make arrangements for defense, defending. These are necessities of the body, he says. These are necessities of the body. And then in Bhagavad Gita, also in the 3rd chapter of Bhagavad Gita, let's see if my Bhagavad Gita is here somewhere. Okay, no, it's not. But there's, I believe it's 3:37, that verse that says, Kama Esha, Krodha Esha. So when we think of karma, it's important to understand that there is, because this is explaining the Varnashram system in some ways. And so in our institution of ISKCON, we kind of look at Varnashram in two ways. We look at Varnashram as far as regular Varnashram, and then we look at Varnashram as Daivi Varnashram, and that's spiritual Varnashram, right? And so when we're looking at Varnashram as far as spiritual Varnashram, then sense gratification and artha, karma, they're all dedicated to the service of the Lord. It's not like in the Varnashram system where people may not have their focus on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In Daivi Varnashram, all of these different Dharma, Artha, Karta, Dharma, Artha, Moksha, they're all directed to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, to Krishna. And so then we have moksha, which here Prabhupada says in this purport. He says that, but to attain liberation, one must give up householder life and place himself in the transcendental renounced order. And so when we think of moksha and we think of liberation, there are different ways. There's 5 different types of liberation that we could have. And so we don't want to think of liberation in terms of the Mayavadis. That's not the liberation that Prabhupada is speaking about here. Prabhupada is speaking about liberation in terms of the Grihasthas, that they're understanding that they're not their bodies. They know, they have that understanding. And so Prabhupada says Grihasthas become eligible for moksha by following their Dharma according to Varna and Ashram. And so this is the Varnashram system. This is why it's important for us to have some understanding of the Varnashram system. This is a system Krishna himself created. And so he says, while dovetailing activities of artha and karma. So we see in our Krishna consciousness movement that there are many devotees, many grihasthas that are exactly following this, what Prabhupada says, that their activities of financial security, they're taking care of that. In terms of their sense gratification, whether that means having children, they do that in terms of religious principles, because everything can be done everything is to be done according to religious principles. And so we see examples of that in our ISKCON movement, Grihasthas being examples of that. And so Prabhupada says that all of these activities are to be dovetailed in the service of the Supreme Lord, thus developing spiritual knowledge, detachment, and devotion. And then in the Bhagavatam, in the story, I think it's of Prithu Maharaj, it's explained that when religion, economic development, and sense gratification are adjusted, then liberation from this material birth, death, old age, and disease is assured. So this is in Bhagavatam, I believe, in this 22nd chapter. So to understand that while Varnashram, Dharma, Artha, Karma are temporary goals. They relate to the material body. And moksha is eternal in that one can go to the Vaikunthas in terms of having, having liberation, getting liberation. Again, we want to emphasize it's not the kind of liberation where we go to the Brahman effulgence. We are speaking about liberation in terms of being spiritual, because Kashyapa Muni and his wife were very spiritual. They were practicing in terms of their Dharma. At the same time, we will hear about this Prayovrata process, and we will hear more about how Kashyapa instructed his wife. And the instruction was to take shelter of the Supreme Lord by performing sacrifice, which is a part of Grihastha Dharma, to be able to perform sacrifice. Now, I want to shift just a little bit because, what's important, Lord Chaitanya is so kind, that Lord Chaitanya says real moksha means to take shelter of the lotus feet of the personality of Godhead. And we in the Hare Krishna movement are most fortunate because of the mercy of Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada, he so kindly brought us what Lord Chaitanya instructed for everyone, including the Grihasthas, which is to take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So real moksha, thank you. Yes, so the perfection of Dharma, Artha, Karma, and moksha is really to attain bhakti, pure devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's the real meaning of it. And in a lecture in Montreal, Srila Prabhupada, he explains, he says, the purpose of Dharma is that these different Dharma, Artha, Karma, Moksha, he emphasizes this point in in Montreal, he says it means that one needs to come to this platform of bhakti. One has to come to the platform of devotional service. So householder men and women, they're engaged in so many different so many different activities that are called material activities. However, if they carry out their duties in Krishna consciousness, they're considered to be already liberated. This is what Srila Prabhupada says in this lecture. And so what does that mean exactly? Because, we hear like in this verse, Prabhupada explains actually in the purport that that to attain liberation, one must give up household life and place himself in a transcendental renounced order. Transcendental renounced order. So bhakti, in terms of the transcendental renounced order, in the first canto, Prabhupada says, Savaya Pumsam Paro Dharmo, Yato Bhaktira Hoksaje, Ahoitakia Pritiyata, Yayat Masu Prasiddhiti. He says the supreme occupation for all humanity is loving devotional service unto the transcendental Lord. Such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted to completely satisfy the self. Now, when we hear this verse and we think about grihasthas, we may want to ask ourselves, how much are we understanding this verse? Or how much are we even following this verse? Because we know that we are to be engaged in pure devotional service. However, myself, I can say, I know I'm not fully purely engaged in pure devotional service. At the same time, though, I understand that the mercy of Srila Prabhupada and Srila Prabhupada's representatives are such in this age of Kali Yuga. This is what the grihasthas actually hold on to. They hold on to the fact that they're following the instructions of their spiritual master, spiritual teacher. And so Prabhupada explains in that verse, that one must actually take shelter of a bona fide spiritual master and submit oneself and get instructions from that spiritual master. And so everyone, no matter what ashram they may be in, what is their varna, whatever their ashram, it's important to know that if one takes shelter, then one will receive the proper instructions. And so I remember there was when my spiritual master was leaving his body, His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, and I happened to be at one point the person that was reading his letters to him, and that he was receiving. And he would get letters from many, many people. But there was one person that whenever I read the letters to him, he would be really eager to hear that particular person's letter. And that person was always saying to him, in the letters, he was saying, Maharaj, you need to give yourself permission to leave. Nobody around you is going to let you leave. They all want you to stay here. You need to let yourself, you need to tell Krishna you're ready to go. He would always write in that mood. And so one day I asked my spiritual master, I said, it's so amazing to me that he writes like this, because as I said, my guru was getting, letters from many places, and many of these devotees that were writing him were like sannyasis, gurus. And so I said to him, this is very amazing, because this is a grihastha that's writing to you like this, right? And so he said to me, in our Krishna consciousness movement, there are many grihasthas that are even more advanced than sannyasis. And this is one of them. And so this is Burjan Prabhu. And so I want to use Burjan Prabhu as an example of someone that, as far as, you know, even the opportunity that I've had to take shelter of him by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam from him, I have seen him and his wife in terms of how the examples that they are, they're preachers, you know, of the Sastra. Their whole life is a mission for Srila Prabhupada, and everything that they do is in service to the Lord. So from my understanding of what's required for Grihastha in this age is the consciousness of the Grihasthas and how to be an example of what Srila Prabhupada has given to us. And so Burjan Prabhu, he's such a deep personality in terms of understanding the sastras and being, how do I say, he takes risks to share the purports of the sastra, because my guru was on his dying bed and he was like, no, you gotta you gotta let yourself. He was very clear that it's time, you know, nobody's gonna want you to go. Nobody wants you to go. This is a fact. And it was a fact. None of us really wanted him to leave. And so there are many examples that I have seen in our Krishna consciousness movement who, to me, are examples of renounced grihasthas in Krishna consciousness. So Burjan Prabhu and Jangacharini Mataji, they are examples for me of renounced grihasthas in Krishna consciousness. Means what? They chant the holy names of the Lord. They worship the deities. They serve the devotees, right? This is the Grihastha Dharma for those that are practicing Sanatana Dharma. And so we have Vaisheshika Prabhu and his wife. We have Anujama Prabhu and Rukmini. We have there's so many examples. Apurva Prabhu and his wife. There's so many in our Krishna consciousness movement that we can see that are examples of grihasthas, you know, that are renounced. So when we think of renounced grihasthas and we think of vanaprastha, that means that those persons are not engaged in sex life, that they've given their lives to serving the devotees, to worshiping the Lord, and to chanting the holy names, so serving the scriptures and preaching. And so, having been trained by a sannyasi in my own spiritual life, from the time that I became a devotee, my care was with my spiritual master. And I was married also. And my spiritual master always encouraged me to understand this verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam. It says, whether one desires everything or nothing, or desires to merge into the existence of the Lord, he is intelligent only if he worships Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by rendering loving devotional service. This is in the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. So this was always the mood of my spiritual master, and also His Holiness Radhanath Swami, who was so instrumental in bringing to the presence of devotees, devotee care, how to care for devotees. And so in that community in Chowpatty, there is such an example of showing us all the different varnas, all the different ashrams, and how they work together cooperatively, and how everyone supports each other in terms of the levels of advancement that they may have in Krishna consciousness. And so I see how Radhanath Swami, my Guru Maharaj, how they encourage those persons that are in Grihastha life to offer their life to Krishna, So in my early years of Krishna consciousness, I often share how Bhakti Tirtha sent me to a foreign country, you know, to preach. And I laugh when I say this because he sent us there on a one-way ticket. that was the mood. That was the mood, you know. You go and you preach and you teach and you learn and you know, and you share. And so that's how I was trained as a Grihastha. So for me, you know, Grihastha life is a life of service. It's a life of service. It's a life of offering. It's a life of caring for others. And so in this verse, which is talking about different levels in some ways of how we can offer ourselves to the Lord, it's important to understand that in terms of what household or life means in terms of care, where Aditi is saying that everything is flourishing, which is consequent, everything is full of good fortune. So for the renounced Grihastha in Bhakti, that simply means that those persons' consciousness is directed solely to pleasing and serving the spiritual master and the Lord. And they do that by their examples and their activities, how they engage in devotional service. And so, again, I would like to, you know, I don't in any way want to minimize the Vanaprastha life, because I know how important it is for us to understand the different stages of growing in our spiritual life. However, I also want to acknowledge that there are many Grihasthas that are examples of what it means to be renounced in bhakti, what it means to be servant of the spiritual master, what it means to be das, anudas. And we don't have to look very far to find them. Even right here, there are Grihasthas that are taking care of the cows, and they're very renounced. So I want to thank you so very much for giving me an opportunity to serve Shri Radha Murali Dhar. Thank you so very much.